Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Well, we got an episode for you today. Today we're going to talk about reinventing repetition, a personalized approach for repetition for children, where they don't go crazy, they aren't mindlessly doing something that they're going to then hate. It's more about meaningful engagement and personalized strategies that you, the parent, are going to adopt to help impact them in a positive way, to make them more curious, to make them more engaged, to help them remember things without the tedious drills of needless repetition. And I'm going to give you some help on how to do that today. So with that, let's dive in. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're going to talk about reinventing repetition. And I think this is one of the advantages that we have in unschooling. We're going to do a deep dive into the art of repetition and unschooling and unlock some of the secrets that I believe make repetition not just effective, but also engaging for our children. First, I want to clear up some things I've said in the past, which is repetition is limited in its value, and I stand by that still today. But what I mean that to be is mindless repetition. I think has limited value. While you could argue that doing something over and over and over again will solidify it in one's memory, it also might make you hate that particular thing that you're reviewing. And I think that's actually the case. I think that's the beauty of unschooling, is we can have repetition in creative ways that aren't as boring, still engaging, and make you just love learning as opposed to hate learning. So let's dive in. The role of repetition in learning. Repetition is a key to mastery. I do believe that there's a talk of 10,000 hours of doing something gives you mastery in something, and I think that's probably the case. That's research backed. That's where it comes from. It embeds knowledge deep into our children's minds, and our minds for that matter. It solidifies understanding and enhances recall, and I think that's very important to do. But I also think there's a limited value in being able to recall something within certain contexts. For example, I can Google everything that I need to find as far as reviewing the exact number for, let's say, a constant in an equation. I could just Google that. It's not really that important for me to remember it. So memorizing those kinds of things I feel is less important. It would be helpful to be able to recall it more quickly, but I don't think that's where I'm going to spend my energy. Really, I think that anything in 2024, anything you can look up is probably not of value to memorize necessarily. I think at least spending energy on it, too much energy on it, would be, I think you're going to not get your intended results. Let's just put it that way. As opposed to like 1985 before the internet. Yeah, that was very, very helpful. I think the more helpful thing in repetition is having a concept in your mind, having an idea in your mind, knowing what to look for, knowing what to ask, being able to at least prompt AI or Google to be able to tell you more, and having enough information to be able to tell you more. And I think that's where theory, concepts, general understanding of something, knowing maybe a couple key terms to help key you in on that, but even that might be even less valuable in the future. So However, we do want to have people remember things. I mean, that's obviously a goal. And I'm just arguing that we focus a little bit more on the concepts and the principles and the ways to be able to look up things that we're trying to learn more about are more important to remember, and that's where I'm going to focus a lot of my repetition. So, anyways, the role of repetition in learning. Continuing on with that, I went on a little tangent there. An example of this is maybe like practicing a musical instrument, and the more times our children engage with this instrument, the more natural it becomes part of their knowledge. Their muscle memory is what we used to call it in the military. You naturally can pick up something. It's like riding a bike. You have muscle memory with a bike. You haven't rode a bike in 5 years, but yeah, you can pick it up and just start riding again. It might be a little rusty, but you remember. It's not like the first time you picked it up. And that's muscle memory. So I think there's some value in that. Moving on to addressing boredom. I think that traditional methods lean heavily on repetitive tasks that lead to boredom. I think this is why standard worksheets that teachers hand out left and right every single day, 5 days a week during school, fail to inspire our children. Isn't that what this is? You know, if we're going to send our kids to learn, don't you want them to be inspired to learn more, to be interested in the topic? Well, hand them a worksheet, and that's the exact opposite. These worksheets are often heavily relied upon with teachers to give the repetition required to remember something. Again, this is a standard worksheet that everyone gets. It's not personalized. And I think worksheets often feel more like a chore when there's no real context. It's very abstract, no connection, and it makes learning feel dull and disconnected. And especially if you just over and over and over again, I already get it, but I have to complete it. Oh my gosh, this is awful. You can picture that. If you remember being in school, you remember that. I think we need to have a little bit more creativity in our repetition, because obviously there's value in repetition, but I think we need to engage children in that. So let's do some creative things. Like, for example, take it might be a one-on-one approach. Today I did it with all 3 of my children at the same time, where I was engaging in math. We were teaching math, and we were teaching multiplication, written addition, and then just concepts of math. And I was doing that all at the same time. So it was a 1-to-3 ratio for me, but I gave a personalized touch with each one. I kept them all at the edge of their understanding. I think that's part of what drives them to want to learn more, is they see that the picture isn't complete yet, but it's not so difficult that they want to give up and that it seems impossible. Like for example, my son who's working on addition, I kept on giving him bigger and bigger numbers to add to do written addition to keep it engaging. I started out with 2 numbers, because it's been a while since we've done it. We leave it alone, we come back, we leave it alone, we come back, we do that. So we just came back to it today. I gave him 2 numbers to add, double digits, two double digit numbers, and he got that with no problem. I'm like, okay, well, he's going to get bored if I give him another one like that. So I gave him 3 digits. Well, he got that one too. So then I gave him one where he carried the 1, which I hadn't given anything like that yet. And I think he got that one, honestly. So then I had to give him a big number. I gave him like a one with a 5-digit number, adding 2 5-digit numbers. And that was kind of pushing the limits of his understanding, especially when he had to carry ones and stuff like that. So he forgot, but then I showed him, he remembered, and then he was able to do it no problem. So I was all the way up into we ended where we were in the billions, adding billions, and we were carrying multiple ones across the equation. And that kept him engaged. He was excited. He actually said he was nervous, and we reframed nervous into excitement, because nervous, at least this is what makes sense to me, the way I tell myself, nervous is the same as excitement. It's the same hormones running through your body. It's just a perception shift. It's just the way you look at things. Nervous is scared to be wrong, whereas excitement is excited to be right. And I just kind of flipped that for him because he was a little nervous. I said, well, it's kind of exciting. You might get this one right. You shouldn't be able to do this one. You haven't been taught this yet. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then he got a little excited, and it kept him engaged, and it took that personal touch to be able to do that. I don't think worksheets do that. I don't think they adjust to the kid's pace to keep it engaging, to keep them at the edge of their understanding. And I think that they're going to despise it otherwise. At least that's been my experience, and I hear that over and over and over again from a lot of people. I keep it tailored to them too, and then I stop having them do this stuff right before I think they're going to say enough. One question away from enough. So if I kind of get the sense that this is getting a little old, right before then, I try and stop it. One question away to get the maximum amount of learning in before they start to say, I'm done. So that way they're excited to come back tomorrow, if that makes sense. And we don't do much work, believe it or not. They learn incredibly fast when you use this method. You might spend an hour and they progress so fast. I mean, it's incredible. Let's see. Moving on. It's always fun to go back through my notes and read what I wrote for this, because I go on so many tangents, but you know what? My podcast, so I guess I could do that. I'm the boss. No one can criticize me about it. All right, so personalized progression in mathematics. I hope I didn't already cover this. Let me read what I wrote. So we'll start there and we'll see if we already covered it. The step-by-step approach to mastering math through incremental challenges. Starting with single-digit addition and gradually increasing in complexity. How this method provides just the right amount of repetition. Yeah. So let me just reiterate before I move on, because I think I already covered this with the last point. When you keep them at the edge of their seat of their understanding, the edge of their knowledge, you progress as fast as you think they can handle it. And that's essentially what I'm going for here. The repetition, and I guess this is the key point I'm trying to draw out here. The repetition does not happen by repeating the same 2-digit math over and over and over again. We can roll that understanding of adding 2-digit math into 3-digit math, because if he knows how to learn, or if he knows how to do 2-digit math, he's going to need that to know how to do 3-digit math, and so on. A better example might even be if you're learning how to do written multiplication, like my oldest son was. So we've done this a couple times. We're going back to it, and he needed a little bit of a review on written multiplication. No problem. We go through we go through one or two with him. He's good to go, but you have to know written addition in order to do written multiplication. And he actually got the written addition part wrong, not the multiplication part. You know, where you have to add, so you go over and multiply everything, then you have to add the sums together at the end. He got that part wrong because he forgot about the carrying one thing. He just messed it up. I was not going to go back and just make him do a whole bunch of written addition to get better at that. No, it's already baked into the concept of written multiplication. Let's just have him do that, so that way he gets good at this task, which incorporates two concepts into one, or two skills into one: multiplication and addition. And then the whole thing together give him a new skill. That's really what I'm getting at with this one. So we're not going to continue to do 30 problems that are 2-digit math when we can just go to 3-digit math, then 5-digit math, then, or what is in the billions, however many digit math that is, 10, something like that. moving on. We make history lessons come alive. All right. I've talked about this in the past. We're currently going through the history of World War II. Now, this is an introductory thing. It's an overview of the battles, the important battles. We're using a documentary to learn this. And we're on the second to last episode today, and we did finish that, so we only got one more, and then we're moving on to the next thing they want to learn about. What we do before we watch every episode is we completely recap every important battle and event, because it's really about the events, and battles, are part of the events. So the important events. What are the important events that led up to where we are today? Because it goes chronologically. This documentary does. It's on Netflix, World War II in color. Which, by the way, some stuff in there you might want to watch out for your kids, especially the second to last episode. Everything seemed like it was pretty much age appropriate, at least for my older ones, until this last one where we talk about the Holocaust. So we had to jump around a little bit with that one, and I had some explaining to do, and I think that they're old enough to be able to understand some concepts, but I had to use a lot of judgment to be able to go through this. Anyways, what we do with each episode is we just recap everything leading up to that episode. And we review names, we review battles, we review places, we review intentions, we review really anything that's pertinent. And this gives them that holistic understanding of everything that's going on leading up to that episode, but also gives repetition to recalling the last documentaries or the last historical events that we already covered, because they might just as soon forget if we didn't do that. And they're going to need to know the names and all the, the countries, and we go over all that stuff right before. And I think that makes it much more engaging when we actually watch these documentaries. And they're really excited. Always do it before. Don't do it after. Trust me. After, they're probably less engaged. They're not going to want to talk about it. But before, if they're young, like my kids are, 10, 8, and 5, they're going to be really excited, especially if you don't use screens a lot. Yeah, they'll be excited. We use in screens. We intentionally use screens at certain times. We don't leave the TV on all the time or anything like that. Moving on. Another way we can creatively use repetition. Again, not a worksheet, which is really what we do in school, and that's about it. Maybe making them take multiple tests covering the same material. It's the only way repetition happens in the classroom. Reviewing the same material over and over and over again. We do dinner time discussions. And this is just repetition through conversation. And I think that when we have these, hey, what'd you do today? Hey, we learned about World War II. Well, tell mommy what you learned. Tell mommy, and they're excited to tell them. They all want to kind of show off their knowledge. They sound really intelligent when they do it, and I get why they love doing it. Because it's like, wow, you sound really smart. If you were to say this in front of a group of people, they'd think you're a genius. Maybe not genius is too far, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's, for a fourth grader and a second grader to be able to, or third grader to be able to talk really intelligently about World War II and the Treaty of Versailles and all these things that like they're remembering the Land-Lease Act. And it's like, wow, pretty cool to hear them talk about it. I mean, more they could probably talk more intelligently about this than I would venture to say 80% of college students in the United States. Yeah. I would put them up against them. And I'd put money on it if I were a betting man. Anyways, we use dinner time conversations to reinforce it. We might go down and talk about it with my parents, and they can get into it with them. Questions about what we recently covered are fun and engaging. Ethical questions And I've talked about this in the past with the, oh gosh, what was the battle in World War II? See, I have to ask my kids. I don't want to just sit here and think of it and make you guys wait. But Dresden, the battle of the firestorm in Dresden. They basically area bombed the entire city, and they did not aim it at military targets. And we're talking about the Allies here, which brought up the conversation of how many civilians is appropriate to die to stop the Nazis from taking over Europe, Russia, the world. How many civilians would you sacrifice? And those kinds of conversations, as we continue to re-engage our thinking about whatever topic we're talking about, in this case World War II, we're effectively giving them more repetition. Saying the name Dresden over and over again makes them remember it. Also, a funny note, giving them interesting ways to remember. If you've ever read any memory books on how to remember things, before there was written, before things were commonly written down, we used to have to remember a story to be able to tell it or remember things. So like an emperor of Rome would get up and go through a big speech to everyone. Well, he didn't have, stone tablets in front of him or papyrus or anything like that. He had to remember everything. And they teach the old techniques in these books, if you ever look into it, with these memory champion people, on how to remember stuff. So I'm actually teaching my children how to remember things because I've read some of those books and I use those things, I use those memory techniques myself. So I'm teaching them how to remember stuff. So definitely look into that if you're interested in trying to remember more, especially like abstract stuff like the name of a city or a leader or stuff like that, or the chronology of events. I'm off my game today, guys. Forgive me. So conversation, great way to do it. And we're working on other skills at the same time, which is really cool. And they're going to get repetition at that. And that only happens through a personalized touch. Next, I have hands-on repetition using props. So this might sound like a really weird one, and honestly, it probably is. But you can keep children engaged by giving them physical objects to help them review something. For example, when we review maybe something with physics, and this is the example I'm going to use. I'm going to use a physics example. Magnets. We're able to maintain interest without being overwhelming and continue to let me rephrase that. We're able to reinforce learning more effectively than traditional repetition because we're watching what we already learned in action, and we're now making the connections in our brain to be able to understand that. For example, we watch a YouTube on how magnets work. We actually watched like 4 YouTubes or 5 YouTube. I don't remember. We watched a bunch. Then we watched some cool stuff you could do with magnets that don't have anything to do with the actual physics of it. They're just watching them live. And then what do? I hand them magnets, and they get to see it in action. And they just play around with their magnets. I just gave them a whole bunch of magnets. I ordered some online. And then they get to see how they work in action. And now I'm also laying the groundwork so that way one day when I say, oh, you want to be an engineer? Oh, you want to be an architect? Oh, you want to be whatever? I'm going to point back to the physics of whatever we reviewed, for example, with magnets, and say you need to learn math because you can actually predict what happens using math with magnets. And if you can predict what happens in using physics, you can predict if you can build a stable structure, design a stable structure, make a rocket launch, whatever they might be into, making math exciting and relevant. So it's just, it all blends together, guys. This isn't, Yeah, it's about repetition, but like, gosh, it isn't just one goal when we teach physics. It's like we're connecting everything together. Future career, life lessons, like everything's intertwined. When we tweeze everything apart and just focus in on we're only going to cover physics, it makes it so less relevant to the real world. We're only going to do math. No, talk about how you can use math. Talk about how it's relevant. Oh, here's one way we did that today. We were talking about multiplying and adding. And what I did is we got to such a big number, I could not plug it into my iPhone calculator. I think it only goes up to 999 million. Well, I needed to go in the billions, so I pulled out an Excel spreadsheet. They were amazed by this because I could plug in equations in an Excel spreadsheet and do cool stuff. Well, we ended up getting into the conversation of money and how much money they could make. And it's a math equation, and they could figure it out if they knew how to do this math. And then we started building an Excel spreadsheet to be able to predict how much money they could save in a given year if they did chores X amount. And we just made that independent variable changeable to whatever we wanted. So they want to earn X amount of dollars per month. We just plugged that in, and we could see how much they would save, how much they would give, how much they would be able to spend. And then it was cool. We got a lesson in compounding interest, because then we said, well, if you invested that in the bank, how much money would you get at the end of the year? Boom. Or whatever investment. Maybe not to the bank. I said the bank of dad, because that's how I plan to teach them finances in the future, or at least investing, is invest in the bank of dad, and I'm going to pay them, but only out of their spend money. So they're going to have to sacrifice out of their spend money, put it in the safe. Whole nother podcast episode. Anyways, they were amazed. Let me just tell you, blown away by compounding interest. So I think I taught them a good lesson with that. So again, everything intertwines. We're teaching math, but now we're teaching finances. We're also teaching forward thinking of the future. My future self, I want to be better off, so I'm going to go over and sacrifice now. We're getting that established too. Moving on. That had nothing to do with hands-on repetition with props, but again, fun. Strategies for effective repetition is my last topic that I'll talk about today. We need to keep them engaged and challenge them just enough. I already kind of covered this. We need to balance difficulty to maintain interest without overwhelming them. Again, adjust their complexity in math or whatever it might be to be able to build their capabilities and foster growth without the frustration. They may get frustrated, but you know what? We got to learn how to handle that too. The parent's role, and I think this is why more of what I want to cover in this. The parent's role is tailoring their learning experience personally just for them. It's not a standardized worksheet. We're going to tailor the learning experience with them to make it relevant, knowing what their interests are, knowing what we would like to see them get out of it. Since we've been down this road, and what would we want someone to teach us? Well, that's what we're going to do with them. We do unto others as we would have them do unto you. I think that I'll just stop there. When we're intentional unschoolers, we are focusing in on our child's strengths. We're also building up anything they're weak at that we know they're going to need to know. And we're going to help them be very well-adjusted adults. They're going to have a very broad understanding of the world, and they're going to have very specialized knowledge in things that have interest to them. They're going to have a very deep understanding of their self. I think that repetition is just another strategy to help them be able to solidify in their mind whatever they learned without the worksheets. And if it is the worksheet, if you're actually using a worksheet, which I have no problem with, don't be afraid to skip pages, okay? Because I have no problem with getting a curriculum and going over it if they want to learn it, and just skip into the worksheet that they want to do. We've done that, and don't be afraid either. It's better. It's going to make them enjoy what they do. So in conclusion, repetition in unschooling is not about mindless drills. It's about meaningful engagement and personalized challenges that you, the parent, are going to help them with by adopting these strategies and maybe others that I didn't even name, because you understand the impact of your role in their learning journey and how much you can help them take off like a rocket and excel. So with that, I'm going to end the episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.